Find another table. This one's for real surgeons. For a second, I couldn't tell if I heard it or imagined it. Then the laughter hit. Small, sharp, controlled. We were in the St. Victoria Foundation ballroom, all marble and chandeliers, silver chargers catching the morning sun, donors in pearls, board members in Italian suits, a string quartet humming something polite. I stood there with my plate, the coffee still steaming, and felt my face burn. Madison didn't look up from her phone when she said it again, sweeter this time. "You heard me, Dr. Morgan." I froze. My hand went numb around the cup. The place cards on the table showed names that liked themselves in gold foil. Trustees, benefactors, the Verrilli family. People stared, then pretended they weren't. Someone gasped softly, like a tea kettle trying not to whistle. At the next table, a cardiologist laughed, quick and nervous, and glanced at Lucas to see if it was allowed. I tried to swallow and couldn't. Dry throat, heavy chest. I set the coffee down so I wouldn't spill it and embarrass myself more. "It's a family table," Madison added, pushing her designer scrub sleeve up like it meant she belonged. "Protocol." "It's a hospital," I said, voice barely there. "Protocol is patient first." From across the circle of linen and money, Lucas smiled like a father forgiving a foolish child. "Rachel," he said, soft enough to sound kind, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't make a scene." Something in me trembled. Not anger, not yet. That shaky place you go when the ground shifts under your shoes and the chandelier light feels too bright on your skin. I could feel my pulse in my jaw. The donors stared over their salmon rosettes. The head of radiology cleared his throat and looked down. One of the ICU nurses, God bless her, started to stand, then sat back when Lucas raised a hand. "Please," he said gently, "find another seat." Humiliated. There's no clean way to describe it. I felt 12 years old and 36 at the same time. I picked up my plate, nodded once, and turned. A waiter in a white jacket stepped aside like I was. I put the cup down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. This was not an OR where I could tighten a stitch and make the bleeding stop. This was theater, and I'd been given the wrong costume. "Dr. Morgan," a voice said behind me. HR beige dress, clipboard smile. "Could you join us upstairs?" I nodded, walked out through the gold-framed doors into the cool hallway, the hotel carpet swallowing my footsteps. The elevator ride felt long. In the mirror, I caught the red rising in my cheeks. The steadiness I usually found before cutting into a sternum, nowhere to be found. Glass office, view of the common, winter trees like pencil lines. Lucas already there, jacket perfect, tie patient. HR took the seat by the window and balanced her tablet on her knee like a judge with an iPad. "Rachel," Lucas said warm, "this isn't easy." "Then don't do it," I said, and my voice came back with more steel than I expected. He sighed like I'd disappointed him personally. "You're being placed on administrative leave." "For what?" "Insubordination," HR said, as if reading a weather report. "Unprofessional conduct toward junior staff." I laughed. It came out like a cough. "She's not my junior staff. She's your niece." Lucas's eyes cooled. "Watch it." "You told me to mentor her," I said. "Mentoring and letting someone take credit aren't the same thing." Madison arrived late, of course, phone in hand, lip gloss perfect, the smell of expensive shampoo and confidence. She leaned against the doorframe like this was a photo shoot. "She refuses to share her technique, Uncle Lucas," she said, the uncle a bright little knife. "How am I supposed to learn if she hoards it?" "The monarch procedure," I said, the words crisp in my mouth like a sterile glove. "Say its name." Madison tilted her head. "We're calling it the Verrilli method now, easier for the board." It landed in my gut so hard I had to grip the back of the chair. "You renamed my operation." Lucas steepled his fingers like a man about to deliver sad wisdom. "Rachel, you're not bigger than this hospital." "I never tried to be," I said. "I tried to save lives." "By yourself?" he asked, eyebrows up. Something in me broke and hardened at the same time. I picked up my stethoscope, the one tool no one could confiscate without looking ridiculous, and slid it into my bag. The room swam for a second, like I'd stood up too fast. I grabbed the edge of the desk. My palm left a small half-moon of sweat. "Rachel," Lucas said, "don't make this personal." I almost laughed again. You made it personal the day you put your name on my work." Madison made a tiny noise, a laugh she couldn't quite swallow. She really thinks she invented surgery. I turned to her, calm, clean. "I think I kept 87 people alive who weren't supposed to be." She blinked. For a second, the gloss cracked, and I saw a girl who wanted what I had and didn't know how to get it without a shortcut. Then it was gone. I handed HR my badge. She took it like a prize. Lucas stood as if the meeting had been polite. "Take some time," he said. "We'll reconsider if you're willing to—" "Willing to what?" I asked. His smile sharpened. "Share." I opened the office door. The hallway outside was so quiet it hummed. He called my name once. I didn't turn. The elevator took forever. When it finally opened, a nurse was inside with a tray of fresh linens and a look that said she'd heard. She stepped out to let me in, then stepped back in anyway and rode with me. She didn't say anything until the doors opened on the lobby, all marble and donors again. "You're the best we have," she said softly. I nodded, because if I spoke, I was going to choke. We walked to the revolving door together and split without ceremony. Outside, Boston air, thin and cold, a clean blade to the face. I stood on the sidewalk in front of the hospital logo, the engraved letters big enough to believe in themselves, and watched a volunteer scrape my name off the surgeon roster board by the main desk. One long pull of a cloth. Gone. My phone buzzed. I didn't look. Someone from anesthesia murmured, "I'm sorry," as he passed. A donor brushed my shoulder and didn't apologize. A resident pretended not to see me. Pretending is its own kind of loyalty this close to power. The buzz came again. I pulled the phone out with fingers that didn't. Behind me, the ballroom doors opened. Laughter, dishes, the string quartet trying to make everything sound worth it. I felt my hands go steady, finally. The shaking stopped. It was a strange relief. Someone called my name again. I didn't turn. I stepped into the wind, the coffee smell from the caterer mixing with the street, and let the cold wake me fully. "They fired me," I said under my breath, the words clear, simple, true. Then I felt the heat in my chest shift into something cooler, steadier, almost calm. But they just lost everything. I let myself into the brownstone at 9:40, key sticking the way it always does when my hands are cold. The hall smelled like lemon cleaner and winter air. I set my stethoscope on the kitchen counter and it felt heavier than it ever did on rounds, like the neck bruise you don't notice until you touch it. The trophies on the shelf, glass hearts, fake platinum, looked ridiculous next to the bowl of oranges and a chipped mug from med school. I stood there for a beat, breathing through the quiet, then went straight to the hall closet. The banker's box was on the top shelf where I'd shoved it years ago. White label, my block letters, Monarch files. The tape rasped when I pulled it open. Inside, hand-sketched diagrams with notes in red pen, OR checklists with coffee rings and smudged fingerprints, thank you cards with shaky signatures, a photo of me and the ICU nurses after survival case 50. I remembered the cake they brought. The frosting tasted like cardboard and joy. I ran a thumb over the corner of the photo until the paper warmed under my skin. "Let me handle the patent. You just save lives." Lucas's voice came back like a voicemail I never deleted. I could see his hand resting on my shoulder, the benevolent king. Back then, I nodded and went back to work. Authors get acknowledgments. Owners sign assignments. I'd signed one and not the other. My jaw clenched so hard a dull pain shot up my ear. I grabbed my phone and hit Mark's name. He picked up on the second ring. "I'm assuming this isn't social," he said. "He took it," I said. My voice surprised me. It sounded like I'd swallowed ice. "Then we go to evidence," Mark said, calm as a pulse ox. Photos started coming in. Whiteboard shots with messy block letters and times circled. A perfusionist emailed me her ECMO notes from a rescue case where she'd written, "Morgan variant cannulation." A nurse I loved found a dated checklist in her locker. "Morgan, sternal sparing step 3. Clear as a road sign." I opened the thank you cards and reread them like I was trying to find directions to a place I used to live. "Ms. Donnelly, age 72. You promised I'd wake up and meet my granddaughter. She's a biter. Mr. Alvarez, you called my wife from the hallway before and after. That's what saved us." I pressed the edge of the card to my lip and tasted paper and salt. The consent talk recording sat in a folder labeled Teaching, Patient OK. I clicked one. My voice came out steady, almost soft. "I'll be in the room with you. The technique I use reduces the time your heart is stopped." The patient coughed and said, "Will you be the one holding it?" And I said, "Yes." Me. I paused the file and stared at the light on the speaker. My eyes burned. I blinked hard and the burn changed into heat that actually helped. By noon, I was at Mark's office in Back Bay, a floor of dark wood and framed verdicts. He'd already dragged a whiteboard into the conference room. He wrote dates across the top while I slid binders across the table and opened my laptop. "Pre-op conference, your slides," he said, tapping the printed deck. "CME invites addressed to you. Submission emails, Morgan et al." He circled each. "Authorship proves originality. Now we tie it to survival." I pulled a thin folder from the box like it might break. "Outcomes." He lifted an eyebrow. I laid out the pre/post numbers, mortality before, mortality after, units transfused, ICU days. I had peer letters too, chiefs from Providence and Philly who'd flown in to observe and written it down in hospital stationery because they were decent and careful. And I had the QA memo from St. Victoria. Monarch adoption decreased cross-clamp time by 12 to 18 minutes. Mark read that line twice and exhaled. "This is clean," he said. "Hospitals will argue authorship forever. Outcomes are different. No jury hates saved lives." He made copies while I sat very still and listened to the copier grind, a sound like something building that couldn't be undone. At dusk, I texted a senior scrub nurse I trusted. She didn't want to meet inside. We met by the river, breath making small ghosts in the cold. She kept her hands in her jacket pockets and glanced around like the Charles could eavesdrop. "They told us to start calling it the Virilli method last month," she said. My stomach dipped. "Who told you?" "Admin," she said. "A memo. They said donors respond to the name." She took a photo out of her pocket, folded twice. The OR wall, the corner by the stock cabinet. Monarch, Morgan, in faded marker under a fresh line of neat handwriting. Virilli method. The old letters showed through like bruises. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "It's not on you," I said. "Thank you." She touched my arm once and left. I stood there with the photo and watched the water move like it always does, whether anyone deserves it or not. The air cut through my coat and found my ribs. It steadied me better than any pep talk. He didn't just steal a technique. He rewrote who kept those people alive. That sentence settled in my chest like a plate that finally sits where it belongs. Back at Mark's office, we worked under yellow lamplight. He was on his third espresso. I was on whatever anxiety runs on. "We send a preservation letter tonight," he said, typing. "They can't destroy or alter records once notified." "And if they already did?" I asked. "Hospitals don't erase billing," he said. "Or time codes, perfusion logs, suture counts, blood products. Money leaves footprints." I nodded. He printed the letter and slid it across. "Sign there." My hand didn't shake this time. I wrote my name like it meant something. He scanned it, emailed it to the general counsel, CC'd 3 titles that begin with Chief, and set a read receipt like a man lighting a fuse with a smile. On the ride back, my phone pinged. Voicemail, Lucas. I put it on speaker and set it on the passenger seat. "Rachel," he said, warm like a blanket you didn't ask for. "We can settle this quietly. You're hurting yourself." A pause. "Think about your reputation." I let the message end without touching the phone. The car heater clicked. My jaw unclenched on its own. I didn't need to rehearse a response. Silence was the only scalpel that fit. At home, I laid everything out on the kitchen table like a field kit. Notes, letters, photos, the scrub board shots, the outcomes binder, the QA memo, the ICU picture after case 50. I signed Mark's engagement letter and slid the pen across the page slowly, feeling the drag of the nib. Something in my chest dropped into place. I didn't feel heroic. I felt aligned. I made tea and forgot to drink it. I opened the window an inch and let the cold in on purpose. The city sounded like normal, sirens far away, tires hissing on wet. "Okay," I said to the quiet room. "Let's begin." New York hit me like a bright slap. Bad coffee, cold wind, taxis arguing. I walked into the American Cardiology Annual Conference and the lobby smelled like carpet cleaner and ambition. No VIP lanyard this time. No speaker ribbon. Just my last name printed plain. "Affiliation?" the registrar asked without looking up. I hesitated. "Independent." She typed it. That word lodged in my chest like a rib out of place. I followed the current toward the main hall. Giant room, ceiling too high. Sponsors lined like soldiers, screens the size of operating room walls. I stopped when I saw the keynote slide hanging over the stage. The Varley method, a breakthrough in cardiac repair. My foot caught the lip of the aisle. I didn't fall. I froze. Madison stood at the lectern in flawless scrubs, hair like a commercial, mic tape just so. She smiled into the crowd like she owned the air. Music faded. Applause softened. She began. By reducing clamp time by 18 minutes, we reduce ischemic exposure and post-operative morbidity. My words. My cadence. My breath shortened step by step. The coffee cup in my hand creaked. I eased my grip before it cracked. Slide 2, cross clamp tables. My layout. My color code. My color code. My font, down to the stupid arrow I'd made at 2 a.m. years ago because it looked friendly. My throat went dry. I forced myself to sit. The chair felt too small. My shoulders locked. Rows ahead, a fellow leaned toward his colleague. That's Morgan's. Another whispered, did they rebrand her study? Madison kept going, smooth and bright. We modified proximal cannulation to preserve myocardial perfusion while maintaining visibility. Modified. Preserve. Maintain. Words you use when you didn't do the work yourself. Slide 5. Survival curves. The bottom corner still had my faint initials from an old export. RM82. She hadn't even noticed. Or she had and didn't care. My chest tightened in that steady way I know from post-op patients when pain calls itself pressure. I breathed past it. Waited for the one clean place to cut. She clicked to the final slide. Applause. Thin, eager, trying to land. I stood. Those aren't your results. It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. The room's noise flew backward like a wave. Madison blinked into the lights. I'm sorry, she said, smiling with her teeth. I stepped into the aisle. My legs felt like mine again. That's my data. My operation. You even used my patient initials. Gasps broke around me. Phone cameras lifted like a flock. Madison's smile twitched. Dr. Morgan, she said, all sugar. You abandoned the project. We perfected it. You perfected theft. The moderator hurried to the lectern, palms out. Let's keep questions for the end. Lucas stood from the front row, hand up like a traffic cop. Dr. Morgan, please. This is not the time.
You're right, I said. The time was when you forged my work into your niece's resume. Laughter from one side, a hissed Jesus from the other. Madison's mic picked up a quick breath. I watched her knuckles whiten around the remote. Security edged toward the walls, unsure. Too many phones pointed, too many eyes hungry. I took one more step forward and turned from the stage to the audience. You want the truth? I said. Ask any patient who survived Monarch. Ask their families who signed consent with my name on it. Silence landed so hard I could hear someone swallow in row 3. Even the projectionist stopped tapping. Screens held still. Lucas took the mic from the moderator with a smile that strained. Colleagues, Dr. Morgan is currently under review for professional misconduct. Her accusations are unfounded and, frankly, dangerous. Then prove it, I said. Open the patent registry. That information is proprietary. Proprietary doesn't mean stolen. Half the room clapped, unsure if they were allowed. The other half stared like the floor might open. I let the quiet cook for one more breath, then turned, walked the side aisle and kept walking. Reporters peeled from their seats and followed. Dr. Morgan, are you accusing St. Victoria of fraud? No, I'm proving it. Do you have evidence? I have patience. Microphones chased my shoulder. A boom mic clipped my hair. I kept my eyes on the exit sign like it was an artery I needed to find. The corridor smelled like stale air and hotel flowers. Security trailed us without touching me. Doctor, one comment, just one. Not here. The elevator door slid open like a door to a cooler OR. I stepped in, hit close, and watched the lenses bounce off metal as it shut. Upstairs in the hotel bathroom, I washed my hands, though they were clean. Water too hot, heat breaking the tremor in my fingers. I looked in the mirror and saw mascara smudged under one eye and jaw muscles clenched hard enough to hurt. When I smiled, it wasn't pretty. It was steady. Backstage, they weren't steady. I didn't see it, but I could imagine it as clearly as a scrub schedule. Lucas gripping Madison's wrist hard enough to make her drop the remote. What the hell was that, he would say. She blindsided me. Watch the live stream, I asked. I did, he said. Nice hands. I wasn't shaking, I said. It came out surprised. He didn't laugh. Every word you said just boxed them in. I'm looking at a document right now. Patent transfer, VarilliRevision.pdf. My throat went tight. And? Signature, Lucas Varilli. Witnessed, R. Morgan papers shuffling, his breath in the mic. But the inventor assignment box is blank. I closed my eyes and felt my shoulders drop a full inch. Say it again. He signed the wrong line. I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath since Boston. The hotel room came into focus. The ugly carpet, the glasses wrapped in paper, the complimentary pen already leaking. Then it's time to operate, I said. There was a knock on the door. I didn't answer. Another, louder. Housekeeping, a voice said. I stepped back until my calves hit the bed and sat. The knock stopped. I opened my laptop and pulled up my case slides, the original ones, ugly and true. Each title still had my timestamp in the corner. I ran my finger along the screen, tracing a curve I'd calculated by hand when the software crashed and the statistician was out of town. I saw Ms. Donnelly's initials in my notes and felt something warm in my chest that wasn't anger. My phone vibrated again. Texts from residents, nurses, old attendings. We saw it. Proud of you. About time. One from a perfusionist. You saved my father. He knows your name. I typed back to her. Tell him I remember his joke about hospital meatloaf. She sent back a crying, laughing emoji and a heart. I stared at it longer than a grown surgeon should stare at cartoon tears. I made myself drink water. I changed my shoes. I wiped the liner under my eyes with a towel and decided to leave the rest. I checked my pulse, steady. I checked my hands, steady. Good enough for an OR, good enough for a war. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. A room service tray leaned against the wall, 2 silver domes, a wilted lemon slice. I walked past them like they were exhibits from a life where I still apologized to furniture. The elevator dropped fast. My ears popped. In the lobby, the conference crowd... I kept moving, because if I stopped, I'd let the moment swallow me, and I needed the opposite. Outside, the air hit cold and clean. Horns. Voices. A bell somewhere. I walked to the corner and waited for the light like a normal person. Across town, in some curtained green room, I imagined Lucas back at a mirror that wasn't kind, watching replay after replay while a handler shoved a talking point into his hands that wouldn't work anymore. It wasn't my problem now. My problem had a name and a PDF. Back in my room, I packed slow. I rolled my clothes instead of folding them. I tucked my stethoscope into the side pouch like it might bruise if I didn't. My hands moved without instruction. The TV ran B-roll of the conference without sound. On the screen, a red banner scrolled. The Varilli controversy deepens. My phone chimed again. A headline lit the lock screen. Dr. Rachel Morgan, the woman who challenged her own hospital. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't send it to anyone. I closed the suitcase, pressed the edges together, and zipped it until the teeth met without a fight. I stood in front of the mirror and waited for rage. It didn't come. Focus did. Clean, simple, familiar. The thing I trusted most. I picked up my bag, checked the floor, and turned off the lamp. The room dimmed the way ORS dim when someone finally turns off the overheads and you realize the hard part is done. At the door I paused, hand on the handle, listening to the quiet hum of the city through double glass. Independent, I said to myself, and it didn't feel like a wound anymore. I opened the door and walked toward the elevator, toward the next cut, toward whatever came when the truth finally made it into daylight. I woke up to my face on every screen in Boston. St. Victoria surgeon sparks public scandal. Clips from New York rolled on a loop, me standing in a ballroom saying the words that cracked their shine. By the time I pushed through the knot of reporters outside Mark's building, microphones were already chasing my breath. Dr. Morgan, statement? Did you sabotage? I kept walking. My chest felt tight, but my steps didn't slow. Upstairs, Mark waited in his glass-walled office. I signed the countersuit slowly, the way I close a chest at the end of a case. Double check, breathe, finish. Let's make this sterile, I said, and public. A news alert popped on Mark's phone. Rachel Morgan versus St. Victoria Medical Network, court filing confirmed. I didn't smile. I felt my hands steady. Across town, Lucas tried to cauterize a hemorrhage with words. I know because people talk when they're afraid. In a glass boardroom he loved too much, he told PR to paint me unhinged. Control the narrative, he barked. She's emotional, unstable. I want every article to say that a junior exec flinched. Sir, there's video. Spin it. She's bitter. She's jealous. Madison scrolled through her phone, watching her own face blink up from strangers' feeds. Lucas turned. Put out a statement in your name. Distance yourself. From you or from her, she whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. By noon, the banner on CNN read, "The Heart Heist. Did St. Victoria steal from its own surgeon?" Twitter shoved 2 hashtags next to each other like sparring partners, #Stand with Rachel and #The Varili Method. Patients started posting photos, zippered sternums and smiling faces. She saved my husband. She held my hand before surgery. A reporter caught me at the elevator insisting I speak. "Dr. Morgan, any comment?" "Let the truth operate," I said. 5 million views in a day. 10 by morning. The internet likes justice when it's simple. Mark's paralegals poured coffee and screens lit the room. A whistleblower nurse had sent us a flash drive. Inside, emails. One made my mouth go dry. From Lucas Varili. To PR team. Subject, launch. Erase her credit before launch. She's replaceable. Mark printed it and slid it across. You can't fake that kind of arrogance. I read it once. Anger didn't surge. Something steadier did. The court sees it first, I said, not the press. Mark nodded. You're the calmest plaintiff I've ever had. I'm a surgeon, I said. We don't panic when it's open. Donors started backing away from St. Victoria. A partnership worth hundreds of millions paused, pending review. In a conference call, someone finally told Lucas the thing he thought he was immune to. One surgeon cannot sink a billion-dollar network, he snapped. She already did, the CFO said. Madison's Instagram turned into a courtroom. Thief, fraud, nepotism. She deleted the account mid-meeting. Lucas watched the screen go blank. Cowardice runs viral now too, he said. 2 days later, I walked into Suffolk County Courthouse in a navy suit that fit like armor without looking like it. Cameras stalked both of us, but I didn't look his way. My pulse stayed slow as a metronome. Inside, counsel huddled. The judge cleared her throat, eyes moving between stacks of filings and faces she'd seen on TV all week. Pending ownership review, she said, the court orders a temporary injunction. No marketing or public use of the Varili method, effective immediately. Gasps hit my back like wind. Lucas's pen snapped. I wrote one line on a yellow pad and pushed it toward Mark. Start discovery today. He smiled. Already did. When we walked out, microphones waited. I let my silence be the story. By evening, panels with stern chins were debating what ethics looked like in a white coat. If this is true, St. Victoria is finished. She represents every woman told to stay in her lane. Harvard's Medical Review published an editorial supporting my claim. My former residents resigned publicly and sent me a photo from a bar 2 blocks from the hospital. Their caption? We learned surgery. We also learned to leave. I printed one letter from a second-year med student and pinned it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a heart. You made us believe integrity still exists. I stood there longer than I expected, reading the sentence until my breath got even. That night, Madison walked into Lucas's office after hours. I didn't see it, but I can picture it. The carpet knows every angry shoe he's ever owned. You told me it was ours, she said. It is, he said. We built this family legacy. You built a lie. He grabbed her wrist. Don't forget who gave you your name. She earned hers, she said. She pulled away and wiped her eyes in the hall. Later, every post she'd ever tagged #SurgeryLife vanished like a scrubbed incision. Mark started talking numbers in my kitchen. They'll offer money soon, he said. Enough to make this disappear. They'll learn I'm not for sale, I said. The next morning, I visited a patient who'd gotten Monarch the year before. The new nurse didn't recognize me until the woman reached for my hand. I heard what they did, she whispered. You still showed up. That's what we do, I said. We show up. I kept it together until the elevator doors closed. One tear, then breath, then stillness. I pressed my knuckles to my ribs and the tremor passed. While I stood under hospital lights I no longer worked for, somebody leaked. Mark slit the top and slid a single-page letter to me. The letterhead was clean and blue. Boston Mercy Hospital. Dr. Rachel Morgan, we'd like you to lead our Department of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Full control. My fingers found the edge of the page and stayed there. Mark's voice softened. They're giving you what St. Victoria never would. I looked at the rain running down the window. It was a sound I trusted, steady, honest. Then we start over, I said. He exhaled. Relief, not victory. I'll handle the calls. I nodded, no smile, no speech. Just a feeling I hadn't had in months. Control without noise. My phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up with the day's last headline. Court halts Varili method rollout as doctor's ownership claim advances. I slid the letter into my bag and stood.
My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. Outside, sirens and rain argued about which one mattered. Inside, I was finished being their scandal. Tomorrow, we would pull every scrub board photo, every perfusion log, every billing code that spelled my name in numbers. Tomorrow, he would realize that hospitals keep better records than memories.
Tonight, I walked past the reporters without a word. They shouted my name. I kept my coat closed, collar up, heels steady on wet sidewalk. A camera flash went off and made the rain look like confetti. It wasn't. It was just weather. At the corner, I stopped for the light and touched the crease of the offer in my bag. I didn't need to look at it again. My decision had already landed. They tried to turn truth into noise. I turned it back into proof. Morning at Boston Mercy tasted like sanitizer and burnt coffee, not marble and donor plaques. The halls were narrower, the floors scuffed, the signage hand-laminated. Patients rolled past in wheelchairs. A volunteer tucked a blanket around an old man's knees. A nurse laughed from behind a mask. It sounded like medicine, not marketing. Dr. Patel met me at the elevator with a folder and a tired smile. "We don't have your old hospital's shine," he said, "but we have honesty." "Then we start here," I answered. My voice didn't shake. That felt new. My office was temporary. 2 mismatched chairs, a flickering lamp, boxes stacked like a small skyline. Monarch notes, evidence, future. I set my stethoscope down and let the weight leave my palm. A young nurse slipped her head through the door. "They said you were the Monarch doctor." "Not anymore," I said, and meant it. "Just Dr. Morgan." I started making calls. The first rang twice. "Elena, it's me." Silence, then a breath. "We thought you'd never scrub again." "I'm not done," I said. "Neither are you." By noon, the door kept opening. A resident with sunken eyes and a coffee the size of his forearm. A perfusionist with a toolbox. A scrub nurse with a box of soft caps. "For luck," she said. No speeches, just people who had stood beside me in winter at 3 a.m. and knew what it meant to come back. By the end of the day, someone taped a piece of paper to the break room wall in blue painter's tape. Boston Mercy Cardiac. Integrity first. I read it twice and didn't trust myself to speak. Mark met me at the loading dock with a stack of forms and a pen. "We incorporate today," he said, "the Morgan Institute for Cardiac Innovation. Mission statement: open data, patient-first decisions, transparent outcomes. Clean language, hard rules." "Do we need a logo?" I asked. He smirked. "Just results." Local news put me in front of a camera that afternoon. No makeup artist, no velvet chairs, just a metal stool and a reporter with a tiny recorder and kind eyes. "Is this revenge, Dr. Morgan?" "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's repair." They aired it at 6. The clip spread without me touching it. Donation emails trickled in, small numbers, then bigger ones. 2 former St. Victoria donors wrote, "We'd like our money to follow the ethics." On the schedule board next to my name, M. Rivera, triple bypass. Old equipment. No robot arms, no 10-person media team waiting outside the OR. Just hands I trusted and a patient who needed air that didn't hurt. "Let's go slow," I told the room. "We do it the way we were trained, not the way they market." We draped, we cut, we clamped. Elena's voice stayed low and steady, calling times, passing sutures. The perfusionist murmured flow rates like a prayer. I found the rhythm I thought I'd lost and rode it until the final knot slid down and held like it remembered me. In recovery, his wife stood up too fast and nearly tripped over her own purse. "You were worth waiting for," she whispered. I nodded because anything else would have broken me open. Once the patient was stable, I stepped into the hallway and leaned my shoulder into the cold tile. Not victory. Air. By night, the stories started to flip. From fired surgeon to reform leader, one read. Another, Dr. Rachel Morgan rebuilds medicine one heart at a time. A podcast called The Doctor Who Fought Back hit 1 million downloads in a day. Hashtag sputtered, died, and returned as number sign repair over revenge. I posted once because it felt like enough. Truth needs time. So does healing. Across town, across cities, Madison stared at a TV in the dark. I didn't see it, but I felt the echo when a reporter said, "Dr. Morgan's new institute prioritizes ethics in cardiac care." Somewhere in that moment, she must have recognized the feeling of being measured and found wanting. I knew that weight. I never wanted to carry it again. At St. Victoria, the boardroom looked the same as every boardroom I'd ever been shoved into. Glass that didn't hear you, a table that made everyone sound small. "Donations down 40%, the CFO said, voice clipped. 3 investors pulled out. "We rebrand," Lucas insisted. "We rename again." "You can't rebrand trust," the chairwoman said, and the room went still around the sentence. I met Mark on the rooftop that night. He handed me a paper cup of coffee that tasted like cardboard and heat. Boston blinked below us. "You could have taken the settlement," he said. "And teach them money erases harm?" I asked. He swallowed a laugh. "You've changed the tone of this industry." I didn't want to. I just wanted my work to mean something again. We stood there until the wind cut through our coats and the sirens turned to a distant hum. The next week felt like breathing with bruised ribs. Painful, but possible. Medical students pinned my quote to lockers. A patient sent flowers with a note. "Because of you, I got to see my daughter graduate." I read it standing up, hand on the counter to keep steady. I didn't cry. I let the words sit with me until my stomach unclenched. The call came late. His name lit my screen like a warning. "Rachel," Lucas said. "We need to talk." "We already did," I said. "You just didn't listen." "You think you've won?" "No," I said. "I think I survived." He went quiet, then hung up without saying goodbye. My apartment held the silence like a hand over a wound. This time, it didn't hurt. At Boston, the media kept calling. I kept saying no. One exception, a local class of 8th grade girls in science club. They wanted to see the lab, so I let them. They asked better questions than most doctors. One girl stayed behind and said, "My mom says you made it okay for me to want this." I told her the truth. You don't need me to make it okay. You just need a door and your hands. St. Victoria thinned out like a winter tree. The CFO's emails leaked. Partnership paused. Insurer nervous. Malpractice exposure rising. Lucas smiled for cameras and bled in closed rooms. He kept trying to sound like a leader and only managed to sound loud. "Rebranding will fix it," he said again and again until even he seemed to hear himself. Late one evening, Mark walked into my office with an envelope and an expression I'd only seen after good verdicts. "He wants a meeting," he said. "Four Seasons Boston. Private." I took the page and read his words without moving my mouth. He would try a number first. They always did. "He'll try to buy me out," I said. "And if he does, then he'll learn what I don't sell." After he left, I stood in the doorway and looked at the unit we'd rebuilt from duct tape and belief. The sign, "Integrity First," hung crooked. The tape curled at one corner. I straightened it and pressed it flat until it stuck. In the morning, we had a valve case that would take all day. The night nurse handed me the chart with a pen mark on the margin. She'd circled the word granddaughter in the social history like it mattered. It did. Before we scrubbed, I pressed the intercom and spoke into the empty OR. "Same rules," I said. "We explain every step. We own every mistake. We don't look up at the clock unless the patient needs us to." Elena hummed. "Welcome home, boss." I shook my head. Not boss, just Rachel. We opened. We fixed what we could. We stitched it closed. And somewhere between the last tie and the dressing, I realized the room felt like it had before any of this. The way it feels when work is clean and days stack into something you can live with. After rounds, I found a bouquet in the hall with a card tucked under the ribbon. "Because of you, I woke up." I carried it into the break room and set it near the sign. The tape held. The room hummed. I washed my hands and watched the water run clear. For the first time in a long time, nothing in me recoiled. At my window that night, the city reflected back a version of me I recognized. No podiums, no headlines, no fight left to prove. Just a surgeon who knew the difference between saving a job and saving a life. I let the phone rest face down. I let the quiet stay. And in that quiet, I felt it. The work pulling forward, not back. The kind of peace that comes when you stop needing permission and start doing the thing you were built to do. Rain found Boston before lunch. A black envelope found me before rounds. St. Victoria's crest pressed into the wax. Inside, Lucas's handwriting, sharp, practiced, certain of being obeyed. "Let's end this, face to face. Four Seasons, Thursday, 5 p.m. I read it twice. No pulse spike, no thrill, just weather. I slipped it into my coat and called Mark. "He'll try to buy you out," he said. "Then he'll learn what I don't sell." I hung up and finished notes on a patient who needed a new valve more than I needed revenge. The Four Seasons suite smelled like lemon oil and money. Gold light, quiet carpet, a table meant for deals and apologies. Lucas sat at the far end, posture perfect, suit like armor. Madison stood behind him, hands clasped at her waist, knuckles too white for her age. "Rachel," he smiled without warmth, "still making an entrance." "You invited me," I said. "I'm on time." He gestured to a chair. I stayed standing. The folder in my hand felt light. That was new.
"We can make this clean," he said, voice sliding into that polished baritone he'd used on donors and grieving families. "No more headlines. No more court. I'll make you whole." "How?" I asked. 10 million. You walk away. We all move on." He leaned forward, eyes hunting for gratitude. "No press. No victory dance. 10 million to erase what you stole? To rebuild your life? You think money rewrites an operation?" Something flickered in his face, annoyance, then the old paternal tilt. "I made you who you are." I met his stare. "No, you used me to stay who you were." The room drew tight around that sentence. Madison swallowed. He didn't blink. "We're not dragging a hospital through the mud because you felt slighted," he said. "You're better than that." "You dragged it when you renamed my work and fed it to a camera," I said. "I'm just standing where you can see me." Madison stepped forward, voice thin but steady. "We just need your method back. The Monarch data. The name doesn't matter." "It matters to every patient who survived because of it," I said. She looked to him for backing like she had since the first day she walked into my OR with a brand new badge and a phone full of followers. He didn't turn his head. "You let him turn you into a puppet with a white coat," I said. Her eyes shone. "You don't understand. I had to survive in his world." "No," I said softly. "You chose to inherit his lies." Her chin trembled. She stared at the carpet like it could open and swallow the moment. He stayed still, hands folded, the picture of command. He didn't touch her shoulder. He never did when it didn't serve him. I set the folder on the table, thin, plain, deliberate. "You remember signing this," I said. He didn't move. I slid it across the wood. The paper caught the light. Embossed seal, notary stamp, his signature in ink I'd watched dry 3 years ago. Authorship, Dr. Rachel Morgan. Inventor, Monarch procedure. Dated before the patent office ever saw his name. He glanced down and let his eyes skim the edges. He didn't pick it up. "You forged this," he said. "Then call the notary," I said. "She's still alive." He opened the file. His jaw tightened at the first page. At the second, the pulse in his neck kicked. Madison leaned in. Her hand shook where it stopped on the table. "You didn't just steal a name," I said. "You stole a lifeline. Now you get to watch it go back where it belongs." He shut the folder as if that could shut time. "You were like family," he said. The softness in his voice sounded rented. "I gave you everything." "You gave me a mask," I said, "and called it mentorship." "You think you built Monarch alone?" "I think you built your career off everyone who couldn't fight back." He slammed his hand against the table. The sound leapt in the quiet. Madison flinched. "You're destroying the hospital," he shouted. "No," I said. "You destroyed it the day you replaced healing with headlines." "Uncle," Madison whispered, "please stop." He didn't hear her. Power had been a steady drip in his ear for 30 years. Silence sounded like loss. A buzz cut through the room. His phone lit the table. He glanced. It was reflex. "Stifictori a bard, emer genki session / coper fermancy revi." I saw the words backward in the reflection of the glass. "They're already voting, aren't they?" I said. He looked up too fast. "You don't even own your silence anymore," I said. He snatched the phone, stabbed at the screen, ended the call, hissed, "Traitors." "Welcome to accountability," I said. "It's not personal. It's procedural." Madison's voice broke. "You said if I helped you, I'd have a future." "You still can," he said, eyes still on me. "By what? Taking her place?" Madison asked, tears running clean tracks through her makeup. "Carrying your guilt?" She turned to me, searching for a face that might forgive her. "You were right. He used both of us." I didn't answer. I didn't have a word that would fix what she'd traded for a title. "Then stop letting him," I said. She nodded once like it hurt. Then she walked out. The door closed behind her with more honesty than anything he'd said all year. He sank into his chair. The skin under his eyes looked thin. "You think they'll thank you for this?" he asked. "You think they'll remember your name in 10 years?" "They don't have to," I said, "as long as the patients do." I gathered the folder. He watched my hands, not my face. "You're destroying everything I built," he said. Then I guess it wasn't built right. I turned for the door. "Rachel," he said. Not a command, not even a plea, just my name unarmored. I didn't answer.
I left him with a table that finally showed him his reflection. Rain had softened to a steady sheet. The doorman offered an umbrella. I shook my head and stepped into it. It felt clean on my face. Mark pulled up to the curb, rolled down the window. How'd it go? He offered $10 million. You take it? I took the truth instead. He smiled, small and proud. Get in before you catch pneumonia. We drove. I watched the rain run off the bridge cables like veins. By nightfall, the city had done what cities do. Talked. Screens in restaurant windows scrolled the same 3 headlines. St. Victoria CEO under investigation. Monarch authorship confirmed. Board moves to suspect Lucas Varley. My phone buzzed non-stop in my coat pocket. I let it. At Boston Mercy, I rounded on a man who'd come in scared and left hopeful. I charted, signed orders, answered a resident's question with a pen and a napkin diagram. I said no to a live interview, and yes to a nurse who needed an extra hand rolling a patient to prevent pressure sores. Silence did more for me than a podium ever had. Close to midnight, I sat in my office with a cup of tea I wasn't drinking. The hospital had thinned to the people who keep it breathing when the world is asleep. I could hear them. It was the right kind of noise. Mark didn't knock. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, eyes on a tablet, mouth a line I couldn't read. What is it? I asked. He shut the door, rain still on his coat. It's over. What? St. Victoria filed, he said. Chapter 11. He tipped the screen toward me. Breaking news crawled in red. Insolvency after ethics scandal. Board suspends CEO pending review. I set the tea down. My hand stayed still. For a long breath there was no satisfaction, no victory music in my head, just space where a fight had been living. Then maybe medicine can breathe again, I said. Mark sank into the chair across from me. You okay? I'm tired, I said, and I have a valve in the morning. He smiled. Of course you do. We sat in the soft hospital light until the tea went cold. He stood. Get some sleep, Rachel. You too. He left me with the hum of the building and the clean ache of an ending that didn't need a speech. A volunteer at check-in lifted my badge, eyes widening. Dr. Morgan, you're our keynote. I know, I said, and it came out steady. I didn't look for anyone. I didn't need to. A year ago, I fought to keep my name. Today, the room already knew it. Back in Boston, the day before, I'd walked the halls that made me sane again. Boston Mercy wasn't pretty, the floors scuffed, the paint tired, but the work was clean. Residents traded jokes outside the ICU. A teenager in a wheelchair practiced standing with PT and swore like a sailor when he nailed it. Sun cut across the nurses' station and lit a small brass plaque. The Morgan Institute for Cardiac Innovation, founded on truth, built on integrity. Elena, our head nurse, passed with a stack of charts. We hit 100 Monarch recoveries this month. Then it's not just a method anymore, I said. It's medicine. She grinned like I'd signed permission for joy. I signed a discharge for Mr. Harada, a tough Bostonian who cried into my shoulder before he would let go. No cameras for that. No thread trending. Just breath and a heartbeat under warm skin. DC again. Green room coffee that tasted like caution tape. I stood behind the curtain and heard the noise of 3,000 chairs and 2,000 phones trying not to ring. A stagehand clipped the mic to my lapel. You nervous? He asked. No. I meant it. There's no room for nerves when you've already lost everything once. They called my name. I walked out, set my hands on the edges of the podium like I would on a draped belly, and found a few faces in the first row. Residents, nurses, a couple of chiefs who used to roll their eyes at my slides. A year ago, I said, I stood in a courtroom explaining why my name mattered. Today I'm here to remind you that every patient's name matters more. Silence, tight and clean. Medicine isn't about power, I said, keeping my voice low enough to make them lean in. It's about people. It's about the moments we stop staring at charts and start looking at faces. When we say, I'll be there, and then we show up. Someone exhaled hard enough to laugh. A chair scraped. Then the sound hit. Palms first, then bodies rising. It went on longer than my comfort and less than my gratitude. I didn't bow. I just nodded and stepped back. By the time I reached the hallway, Mark had already texted 3 times. You lit them up. C-SPAN already clipped it. Please don't run off to Idaho and start a farm. I let him sweat for a minute, then called.
It was fine. Fine, she says, after detonating a room full of egos. I heard him smile through the phone. Also, you're on the AMA shortlist. I don't need a trophy. That's the point, he said. You deserve one. I hung up and walked past a wall of portraits, men in suits, smiles too wide. I kept going. The world had shifted in quiet ways all year. CNN ran a package called The Morgan Standard. Time put a headline under a photo I hated, The Surgeon Who Fought Back and Won. Johns Hopkins Review printed a dry editorial about ethical authorship that made hospital councils sweat. Boston Mercy's waitlist doubled, and my inbox filled with donor notes that didn't ask for naming rights. At the office, the TV played highlights I didn't ask for. I watched a clip for 10 seconds, then turned it off. Fame was noise. The work was the melody. Mark showed up the next morning and dropped into a chair without asking. You're trending. Again. Please tell me it's for something I actually said. Even better, he said, tossing a folder onto my desk. The Massachusetts Hospital Association just adopted mandatory disclosure for surgical IP. They're calling it the Morgan Clause. I just told the truth. Exactly, he said, softer now. And now it's policy. He sat back, studied me for a long beat. You did it. We did it the right way. I signed 2 orders, initialed a third. The pen felt lighter than the ones I used to borrow from rooms where I wasn't welcome. At the Summit Gala, I took the AMA award with hands that didn't shake. The ballroom was gold and soft and filled with people who used to avoid eye contact in elevators. This doesn't belong to me, I said into the mic. It belongs to every surgeon who ever heard the words, stay in your lane, and kept doing the work anyway. The applause slammed into the ceiling. I set the award under the table before I sat down, just to see if anyone would notice. No one did. Good. In Boston, televisions kept a different score. One channel showed the gala photo. Another showed Lucas Varley exiting a courthouse alone, thinner around the jawline, that fixed CEO smile gone brittle. Once the most powerful man in Boston medicine, the reporter said, now facing malpractice audits and ethics complaints. I stood in the doorway of the residence lounge and watched him dodge microphones. I didn't grin. I didn't gloat. I clicked the TV off. It's done, I said to the blank screen. Elena poked her head in. 10 a.m. consult wants to hug you, she said. Tell them to wait until after vitals, I said. The ripple effects kept coming. We opened a second cardiac unit with windows big enough to hold a sky. A med school graduation in Chicago quoted my testimony without my name, and I liked it better that way. A former patient did a TED Talk called The Heart Rachel Fixed, and I watched his hands move when he talked about waking up to his son's voice. Hospitals in 3 states rolled out open-source Monarch protocols and called to say thank you. I told them to send the thanks to their patients. By summer, young doctors wore enamel pins that read, Integrity Scales, Morgan Standard Certified. I didn't design them. I ordered a dozen and kept them in a jar by the door. Every time a resident did the right thing when no one was watching, they got one. Some days I ran out by noon. In late August, I walked into my office after rounds. Maya had a stack of fellowship applications clamped in both hands. One of these is familiar, she said. I flipped through. Madison Virilli. Clean letters, strong cases, a wreck from a DC hospital chair who didn't know the whole story. At the bottom of her essay, I want to rebuild medicine the right way. Maya waited. I read it twice, then set it aside. Should I schedule an interview, she asked. Not this time. I signed the next form. The room stayed still. That night, the phone vibrated against a stack of consults. Mark. You finally breathe yet? He asked over the sound of wind off the harbor. Maybe half a lung. You're impossible. You love it. Silence, the good kind. You changed everything, Rachel, he said. No, I just reminded people what right looks like. He didn't argue. He didn't have to. The city spoke in headlines for a week. Time ran the piece they'd been chasing for months. The Harvard Ethics Board voted in the Morgan Clause and sent me a PDF with too much Times New Roman. My AMA photo lit up a screen in Times Square, and a nurse sent a selfie from the sidewalk, crying happy and swearing. St. Victoria's old buildings went to auction for public clinics. Our residents cheered, then went back to stabilizing a crash in the ICU like the news was weather. Someone replayed a line from the summit over a sequence of faces I'd never met. Integrity isn't a policy, it's a practice. And when we forget that, we stop healing. I was reviewing applications after 9 p.m., shoes off under the desk, when my phone lit with an unknown DC number. At the same time, an email slid into my inbox.
Subject: White House invitation, National Ethics Board. I stared for a beat, the way you look at a monitor and wait for it to tell the truth. I exhaled once, long enough to feel the day leave my shoulders. Maya knocked. Big news? Depends how you define big. I didn't open the email again. Not yet. I looked out at the skyline instead. Cranes, water, rooftops, the dark, stubborn city I loved because it forced you to earn it. I shut the lamp, left the office, and let the automatic doors part like they always did. The night air was cool on my face. A bus hissed to a stop. Somewhere a siren wound down. I slid the phone into my pocket and walked to the elevators, the echo of my steps steady and familiar, the kind of sound that means you still have work to do in the morning. Fog clung to the old St. Victoria like the building was holding its breath. The auction signs were crooked, stapled through peeling blue paint. I pushed the side door with my shoulder, and it gave, the way exhausted things do. My flashlight cut a thin path down the corridor. No hum, no scrub chatter, no metal clatter from instrument trays. Just my steps and the sound of fabric when my coat brushed my legs. Really wanted to see this place again? Mark's voice bounced off the tile behind me. I needed to remember what it cost. We turned left at the nurse's station. A plastic nameplate lay face down where the bell used to sit. I wiped a circle on the OR window with my sleeve. Inside, everything was gone. Tables, pumps, monitors. The room looked smaller without the machines, like the body after the tumor's out. I stopped at the door with the faded placard, OR3, Dr. Morgan. My thumb traced the edge of the metal. First Monarch patient was right there, I said. We didn't move for a while. The quiet had weight. Do you regret it? Mark asked, soft. Not fighting? I slid my old St. Victoria badge onto the empty surgical tray. The photo was sun-bleached. Just losing sleep. He half smiled. You made peace with the ghost. I think I just turned the lights off. We walked the back corridor, paint blistered, floor tiles cracked like dry skin. I paused at the staff board. A torn strip of label stuck under a thumbtack read, Morgan, Cardiac. I peeled it up carefully and folded it twice, then slid it into my pocket. A construction guy passed with a clipboard. Auction's tomorrow, he said, not unkind. Then let someone else build something honest here, I told him. Outside, the night air felt clean. The door thudded closed behind us, final, without trying to be. At home, the brownstone was quiet in the way you earn. No boxes, no piles of legal pads. Coffee steam climbed beside the window. On the screen, a press request. Netflix Eyes Heart Heist Limited Series. I stared at the subject line, then closed the tab. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A podcast wanted the scandal told one more time. I'm done talking about the past, I said, and meant it. The next afternoon, I put on a charcoal jacket and went to a small auditorium with bad lighting and nervous energy. The banner read, Morgan Foundation for Future Surgeons, Women in Medicine Scholarship. The check looked obscene in its size, like all charity props do, but the hands that shook mine were real, calloused, ink on the fingers from late-night notes. A reporter leaned in. Why this foundation? Because the system that taught me to fight shouldn't make them do the same. Flashbulbs popped. I smiled, not for the camera, for the girls in the second row whispering about their first night on call. After that, the city returned to itself. A new scandal took over the news crawl. My name slid off the trending list without a thud. I walked past two nurses at a cafe who recognized me and chose not to pull me into their morning. They gave me a quick smile and went back to their muffins. It wasn't anonymity. It was permission to be a person again. Boston Mercy's cardiac wing held late winter light like a promise. Kids in recovery were playing Go Fish with a nurse who cheated, obviously and badly. A hallway corkboard listed recovered patients with stick-on hearts, red and gold. I ran a finger beneath a row of names and found one I remembered by the way her husband cried when I told him she'd made it. I clicked it off. Not about me anymore, I said to the empty room. Late afternoon, Mark appeared with 2 coffees and a grin he pretended not to enjoy. They gave you a nickname again. God help them. He handed me a cup and sat opposite on the courtyard bench. Residents rushed past toward the ambulance bay, their coats flaring. A siren wailed somewhere far enough away to be background. So what now, he asked. No lawsuits, no speeches, no chaos. Now I actually get to work. You ever get tired of being the example? Every day. I bumped my cup against his. Beats being the warning. Evening flattened the hospital's edges. Back in my office, Maya slid a cream envelope across my desk like it might bite. Courier dropped this off, she said. Gold seal, big vibes. I laughed. That a legal term? She grinned.
Absolutely. I broke the seal. The White House, Office of Medical Ethics. I read the first line twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because I wanted the feeling of it to land in the right place. Dr. Morgan, your leadership in medical integrity has set a new national precedent. We invite you to keynote the White House Medical Summit on Ethics in Healthcare. Maya read my face. Big news? Depends how you define big. I slid the letter into my bag and looked at my own reflection in the window. Tired, clear-eyed, present. The night shift announced itself in small ways. The rolling laugh of an orderly in the hall. The beep that never sounds urgent until it is. The hush that follows bad news. The sharp, giddy relief that follows good. I walked toward the OR and stopped outside the glass. The room I saw wasn't the one from last night. This one was awake. This one had hands and purpose. We did it the right way, I said, not loud. Elena passed with a chart. You talking to walls again? They listen better than boards. She snorted and kept walking. On my way back, a woman in street clothes caught my sleeve. Mid-40s, makeup tired, eyes bright. You don't know me, she said, but you held my hand before they took my husband in. He's home now. He made pancakes for the first time in years. Thanks. I squeezed her fingers. Tell him to go easy on the butter. Her laugh broke and rebuilt. I will. The next morning, the skyline was scrubbed clean by a bright cold. I took my coffee to the east window and watched light crawl down the glass into the lobby. A city bus rolled past with the ad we'd agonized over words for, and then stopped agonizing because Elena told me to pick the ones I actually say. Boston Mercy. Healing with integrity. I let the words sit in my chest the way we hold pressure on a wound. Steady, patient, certain it helps. Down the hall, I could hear the new team sign out. Someone mispronounced a medication and got corrected. Someone told a joke you shouldn't tell in a hospital, and everyone laughed anyway. My phone buzzed on the desk behind me. I didn't turn. Not yet. The building exhaled in rhythm with the people in it. The wing we built took in the sun like a patient finally breathing well enough to go home. I thought about the badge on the tray in OR3, the label in my pocket, the girls with the scholarship smiles, the boy who would cut with steady hands because he memorized a sentence about small hands needing big care. I thought about the TV I'd turned off and the nickname I didn't want. And then I let it all slide to the edge and settled into the only thing that ever made sense. The work. Maya tapped the door and leaned in. Morning, Chief. Morning. She nodded toward the window. Looks good out there. It does. Rounds in 10, she said. And you've got a thank you note from a school in Dorchester. They sent cookies. They are oddly heavy. Dangerous. Deeply. She left. I stayed with the light one heartbeat longer, then turned. Clipboard, pen, a list of names that matter more than mine, steps that keep people alive. Peace didn't come with applause or statements. It came like this, caught between a sip of coffee and the next decision, between a hand on a shoulder and a new diagnosis, between a door that closes on a past you finally let go of, and a door you push open because someone inside needs you. I finished the coffee, set the cup down, and walked toward the day. The sun hit the glass like it always did, clean and soft. Boston Mercy hummed under it, steady as a resting pulse. I walked in with 2 coffees and nudged my office door open with my hip. My old St. Victoria badge sat beside my new plaque. Dr. Rachel Morgan, Chief of Surgery, Boston Mercy Medical Network. The plastic was scratched to fog, my face a ghost inside it. I ran my thumb over the edge until the past stopped buzzing. Maya slipped in behind me. You're trending again. For what this time? Time Woman of the Year. I handed her the second coffee. Let's not make it about me. Make it about the work. Rounds started like every morning, noisy, kind, imperfect. I stepped into 4 East and the residents straightened without meaning to. A teen girl lifted a thumb from her pulse ox and grinned at me through tape and gauze. You're the doctor. She barked a laugh. I'll shorten it. My phone buzzed. Mark. Peace treating you okay? He asked, wind in his voice. Better than I imagined. You ever think about writing a book? And compete with scandal podcasts? Pass. You're impossible. You love it. We said nothing for a few beats, the kind of silence that knows you've run the distance. You did it, Rach. No, I said. We just stopped them from breaking something good. By noon, the Institute was a montage happening all at once. New fellows touring the sim lab, a plaque unveiled in the teaching wing for every doctor who chose honesty over hierarchy. A grandmother hugging a nurse under the Integrity Scales banner like it was the only flag that mattered. I watched from the mezzanine and didn't step closer. I didn't need to. Graduation hit late afternoon. First class of Morgan Fellows. I sat second row on the aisle and kept my hands folded. A resident at the podium swallowed, found his voice. Dr. Morgan told us saving a life isn't power, it's responsibility. The moment you stop fighting for what's right, you stop being a doctor. Applause rose. I didn't stand. My eyes got hot, then steady. I let it pass. Back at my office in the blue hour, Maya knocked like she was warning a storm. "There's someone here to see you." I looked up. Lucas filled the doorway, smaller than a year ago, edges sanded by consequence. The suit didn't save him, not anymore. "It's okay," I told Maya. He stepped in with both hands visible, like a man who finally learned how to enter a room. "You built something real." "I built what you taught me to," I said, and then I stopped cutting corners. His throat worked. "I came to say thank you." "For what?" "For not becoming me." We let the words settle. Not forgiveness, not a fight, just a truth nobody could bill. "Take care of yourself, Lucas," I said. He nodded once. No handshake, no speech. He left as quietly as a bad idea. Maya hovered. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think so." That was him, wasn't it? It was what's left of him. We stood by the window. The city was rude and alive, which is to say perfect. 2 nights later, we crammed around a table in my kitchen. Mark, Elena, a couple of the old nurses who used to smuggle me protein bars between cases. Cheap wine, loud forks. Elena slapped the table. "You realize we've been through 3 hospitals, 2 lawsuits, and 1 social media war together?" "And yet here we are," Mark said, "unpaid overtime and all." "At least now it's for the right reasons," I said. We raised glasses, not to victory, to surviving clean. Back in my room, I pulled out the strip of corkboard label I'd kept since the auction. Morgan, cardiac. The paper had a tear mid-name. I smoothed it flat and taped it to the mirror.
"We did it the right way," I said to nobody in particular. Morning stitched itself together before dawn. Same path as the bad old days, different light. Residents nodded as I passed. "Morning, Dr. Morgan." I adjusted my glasses, kept moving. A new doc barreled by, panic leaking out of her scrubs. I caught her elbow. "Hey," I said, "take a breath before you cut." She dragged in air like it was the first honest thing she'd done all day. "Yes, Dr. Morgan." My office was the same ordinary it always was. Neat desk, old badge beside new plaque, the framed patient quote behind me, "Integrity saves more than hearts." An email pinged. Subject line, "Employment consultation, Lucas Varili." I let a small laugh out, the kind that shares a private joke with the wall. Maya looked up from the outer desk. "Something funny?" Karma has perfect timing. I closed the laptop and grabbed my coat. "Where to?" she asked. "Rounds," I said. "Then clinic. Then the rest of it." We stepped into the corridor. Sun broke across the hospital glass and caught my reflection, shoulders down, jaw loose. Not a saint, not a headline, just a surgeon who kept her hands steady on the work. Outside, Boston went loud. Inside, the floor kept moving. Faces, charts, names I knew by heart. I walked forward, and the day made room. If this finale moved you, tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with your favorite moment, or the line you'll carry into your own work. Your reactions shape the next stories we build together.